In the United States, there are approximately 5.5 million cases of Alzheimer's disease today. The majority of these cases are in elderly people over the age of 65. Women are covering 2/3 of the disease. It's important for people to know about this because some of you have more than likely been affected by the disease. And it's important to me because I work in a nursing home where I see the effects of Alzheimer's disease every day. The disease is something everyone should understand, and the main points I will be talking about is what the disease is, the signs and signals, the signs and stages of the disease, and what family and caregivers can do. So, what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is a disease that is a very progressive disorder that causes brain cells to waste away, according to the Mayo Clinic's Alzheimer's disease research. The disease works in the brain by disrupting communication between neurons and causes cell death. In a healthy brain, there are billions of neurons that work together to transfer information and chemical signals. In an Alzheimer's brain, the brain can no longer do the same functions. It is common for the brain to shrink when aging, however, it is worse in Alzheimer's. Brain shrinkage cannot be controlled according to the National Institute on Aging. Damage is widespread and many neurons in large groups lose connections with each other and eventually die. This causes communication and metabolism to be damaged. In the early stage of Alzheimer's, it typically destroys neurons and their connection in parts of the brain connected to memory, according to the National Institute on Aging research on what happens in the brain. The disease affects behavior, language, reasoning, and a person's ability to function on their own. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia among elderly adults. In elderly adults, Alzheimer's becomes more and more common, and by the end of the disease, there is complete loss of memory and brain function. Alzheimer's disease affects many people and their families. It is the 6th leading cause of death among elderly people in the United States, following cancer and heart disease. Alzheimer's disease can affect many people in different ranges in severity, according to the National Institute on Aging and based on the fact sheet. The disease was discovered by Dr. Alois Alzheimer in 1906. He noticed the mental illness after a woman had passed who had abnormal brain tissue, and her symptoms included memory loss, language problems, and unpredictable behavior. He found abnormal clumps in her brain called amyloid plaques and bundle fibers, which is called neurofibrillaries. Amyloid plaques and neurofibrillaries are still the most common features of Alzheimer's today. The signs and stages of Alzheimer's comes in 3 stages. The first stage is memory loss, is typically the first sign of mild Alzheimer's disease. Every adult faces some memory loss through natural aging. However, people with Alzheimer's face a disease that is a not normal part of aging, according to the CDC in their research on Alzheimer's. It begins with a condition called mild cognitive impairment, which starts with some memory loss that continues to grow worse. The memory loss continues to worsen, and struggles with simple tasks and vision issues occur. The moderate Alzheimer's disease is the 2nd stage where most damage occurs with brain function. Language, sensory processing, and confusion grow worse, and people start to develop not being able to recognize others. It becomes more difficult to perform everyday tasks such as getting dressed and coping with new issues. The hardest part of this stage is facing hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia. The paranoia can be impulsive and shock many people who are around them. The 3rd stage of Alzheimer's disease is when the brain shrinks the most and the plaques and neurofibrillaries spread throughout the brain. When people with severe Alzheimer's try to communicate, it can come out in ways that are very difficult to understand. Working with them daily, you may be able to pick up on common signals that they are sending, but some cannot verbally communicate, and whereas some others can, and they are fully dependent for care. They are often unable to dress and feed themselves. Caregivers are relied on heavily to make sure they are eating and drinking enough fluids, and by the end of the 3rd stage, it's difficult to get out of bed and can often do very little for themselves. Eventually, when all brain functions disappear, it is fatal and the person who has it passes away. So with all of this, how can families and caregivers help? Family members can research and try to understand the disease and be patient with the family members. Being well informed about Alzheimer's is important in the long term, and there are many programs that teaches families about the difficult behaviors they will be facing. A family member can help in many ways, and learning the skills of a caregiver is the best way according to the Help Guide for Alzheimer's disease. Family members visiting often helps their family members to maintain a positive attitude in their life. And it helps family members who have the disease remember who they are. It makes the family member who's affected feel more supported, and a strong support network helps everyone. Being supportive helps nurses, doctors, caregivers, other family members, and even yourself by making lasting memories with someone in your life who needs it. Something that caregivers can do is help create a routine. The routine eliminates wasted time to make something that should be difficult easier to complete. A set schedule helps people perform their everyday needs, and they're more likely to get dressed, bathe, and go to activities. Caregivers can help Alzheimer's patients to maintain hygiene and take medication to help the fight. When there's a set eating, bathing, personal care, and physical activity schedule, it makes the day go much smoother and allows them to know the plans, which will help keep their attitude positive and keep them active according to the Alzheimer's Association. So, in conclusion, not only does Alzheimer's disease affect the person who has it, but it also affects the family and friends of that person. Everyone's lives change, and it's very important to understand the signs and stages that a person has before being diagnosed. It's very important to understand the disease and be patient with the person. Being patient is important, but also being there for the person who is facing it and not letting them lose everything they know alone.